Hello everyone, Jose Rodriguez back again. This past Sunday, my birthday by the way, and thank you guys for spending that time with me Sunday. This was on the 26th. I did discuss a theory that I sort of became aware of it, or at least I began to explore it. And it had to do because the previous week, my colleague from Precisioncolors sort of described to us how the Pro-1000 is able to figure out and detect, if you will, or calculate, if that's what you want to call it, when a cartridge is actually empty, because there's nothing in here. And the chip, no way it communicates with the cartridge. The chip connects to the printer. And so how does it do that? Why is it that every time a cartridge is declared empty, it's actually empty? It doesn't have ink in it. And so if you're one of those who throws them away, you would not be throwing ink away. That does not happen with EPSON large format cartridges. You do leave some ink behind because they have a different internal construction. They utilize bags that are filled with ink, and those bags are pressurized internally to apply positive pressure. Not so with these. This is just a container. There's nothing inside but just a valve. That's it. And it's not even a one-way valve like EPSON cartridges have. You can actually inject ink inside the cartridge. But anyway, besides the point. Now, when it reaches empty, if you're going to refill, the practice has been to replace the chip with a single-use chip. And that brings you back up to full level. And that basically matches the amount of ink you put in, 80 milliliters of ink. And they work just fine, but they are like $12 a shot. So if you want to save some money, of course, you can just disable ink monitoring. You press that button for 5 seconds, that second one from the power button, after the chip is declared empty. And then that allows you to fill it. It's not going to stop you from printing. It's going to allow you to continue to print. You just don't get any indication at all that there's ink or even a remnant of ink. Now, what happens when you're using this system here, like I have here, the sensor system or ink level sensor system, is that as we thought you had to do is to disable each cart systematically, or each chip systematically as they reach empty. Either drill a hole for your intake port or plug, or inject the ink via pressurized method, and we have descriptions for that in videos how to do that. This is so much better, folks. Okay, I would highly recommend that. But here's the thing. What if I just choose not to disable ink monitoring? And what if I catch that particular cartridge when the chip is almost to go low and I top it off? What could possibly happen? And I really need your collaboration. Okay, I need anyone out there who has a Pro-1000 who has gone ahead and sort of prematurely modified their cartridges for refilling and have refilled them before the original OEM chip has gone empty. In other words, it has been declared low. I need that information. Have you ever gotten to the empty point if you topped off the cartridge before it was basically declared empty physically? Let's look at that a little bit closer, okay? Let's look at that. I'm going to bring the camera and I'm going to show you what my screen is showing right now. And we'll discuss my particular situation, and you compare it to yours, and you guys can at least share information with me, because I'm trying to verify whether this theory of mine holds water or does it not. I discussed this with Mike Lee yesterday. By the way, my wife is having surgery Friday. I was at the hospital for pre-op, and I was just waiting for her to get done. So I called Mike and discussed this theory, and lo and behold, he tends to agree with me. All right, I'm going to bring the camera and take you right to the screen, and you'll see what I'm talking about. All right, I think you can clearly see what's going on here. You see the red X's, those are cartridges that became empty, and I went ahead and disabled them. The ones that have the yellow exclamation mark, those are still considered low, except for this little problem. They have been low forever. Okay, this particular one here was an OEM cartridge that I decided to quickly refill. It was given to me supposedly empty. I drilled it, I filled it with red ink, and I popped it in, and it was still basically reading as low. So I figured, okay, I'll just continue to print on it, and once it reaches empty, I will go ahead and disable ink monitoring. This is the one that I used to determine whether the system was going to work or not. If you saw that very long video of mine, I printed numerous 13 by 19s until finally that cartridge became low enough for the sensor to trigger. That was around 22 ml of ink left, so it was still low. You see what I mean? So these have been refilled. These have been drilled and refilled. All of these were allowed to go empty naturally. And I went ahead and once they reached empty, basically disabled the chip and filled them back up to full. These have not been tampered with as far as disabling because they have never reached empty. All right, let's go back to me. All right, so the question is, of course, are they ever going to reach empty? At least declared by the chip. Maybe not, and I'll discuss why. Now, Michael told us basically that the internal compartments that exist for each one of the 12 channels always hold a certain amount of ink. And I've always described it as being like a toilet water tank. When it is full, no water can get in. The valve is closed. The intake valve is closed. As you flush, the water levels drop, and that flow that actuates the valve begins to drop, opens the valve, and water begins to flow in and fills it back up. The flow goes up and actuates the valve again, and the inlet of water is stopped. Something similar happens inside these compartments. Remember, there's nothing in here that will internally communicate with the printer except for that chip. That chip basically sends its color information to the printer that it is genuine and it should allow it to continue printing. That's all the chip is doing, and also receiving information bit by bit about its levels. Now, there is a few questions about how does that actually work. But let me give you a bit of a very, very basic description of what goes on inside that compartment. So let's look at it, and it's just a container. You have inlet right here from the cartridge, outlet right here to the print head. Two sensors. Basically, they are what they call wet sensors. They actually detect the presence of something wet touching the tip of each one of these sensors. So let's just say that this compartment is full so that it touches the upper shorter pin. We'll call it a pin. It's really a sensor. That tells a valve. It communicates electronically, of course. I'm not going to draw that for you, but it communicates with a valve in this direction, in the direction where the cartridge lives, to remain closed and not allow any more ink to come in. And the ink basically is gravity fed. It's not pressurized, so ink flows in until the levels rise and touch that little pin on the top. That's it. So as you print, levels begin to drop, 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 drop. When this longer secondary pin is exposed to air, it triggers that valve to open up and to replenish this compartment back up to the upper pin level. How much ink does that basically represent? No idea whatsoever. Okay, we really do not know. I would have to know exactly when that is triggered and do a weighing of the cartridge before and after. There's no way to really know when that actually internally takes place, but that's how it works. Ink can only flow when the levels drop down below this secondary sensor. It now detects air. It opens up the valve, ink comes in, levels rise, and the upper pin is touched by ink and it shuts off the flow. It's very intricate, but actually quite simple the way that works. Now, unless the printhead somehow is calculating by the number of droplets that are generated, and the droplets vary in size and volume, unless the printhead somehow can detect how much actual ink is passing through its nozzles to determine, for instance, how much ink did it take to print this, okay? And we kind of get a hint that that may be taking place, because if you have the accounting manager software installed, it literally tells you that that job took, 2.02 ml of total ink. So somehow it is detecting that, but then is it also keeping track per channel how much ink has been used, knowing that the original volume of a cartridge is 80 milliliters? Is that how it's keeping track of ink flow or not? Or is it relying simply on this more crude method, okay, where it knows the stop and the open of that inlet valve and how much ink it takes to bring it back up to full again? And after so many such cycles, it knows that so many ml of ink have been drawn out of the cartridge and are now sitting in the compartment. Now, here's a condition that could occur. The ink levels drop below the second pin, valve opens up, and the last bit of ink that was in that cartridge enters. But it doesn't quite touch the top one. It's declared empty, supposedly, right? It's declared empty at that point. What if it touches the top one and you have like maybe 1 ml left in that cartridge? Then it doesn't know. It thinks there's more ink in the cartridge, and it will go through a second cycle again. But that one time, that next time, it's going to not have sufficient ink, and it's going to declare the chip empty. And also, of course, the cartridge will be empty because there's no more ink to allow that level to rise and trigger that upper pin. It's really tricky and really neat when you think about it, okay? So here's my theory. What if I always keep those cartridges topped off? They reach almost low, and I keep topping them off. Those ones that you saw have been low forever. Okay, forever, folks. I process the cartridge and I keep everything topped off, even before I put the sensor system on. And they have not gone empty. Is something odd, something weird happening here? I want to hear from you guys. Have you guys processed your cartridges? In other words, either filled them using the regular pressure fill method, decided not to change the chip yet because it wasn't quite empty yet. Did it ever go empty on you? Or did it stay at a permanent low level? That may be what I am seeing here. And Mike thought maybe that is just something that slipped their minds, because the team, the engineering design team for this printer has nothing to do with the Pro 10 or the Pro 1 or the Pro 100. Those are separate design teams. They don't really talk to each other. So that may be something that they never looked at ever happening, because they didn't think any of us would do any of this stuff that we're doing, okay? Simple as that. That may be the case. So my goal now is to put this baby to use. I got boxes of 13 by 19 paper that I am going to just go ahead and burn through. It's too bad. I just need to verify this. And because I know, absolutely know, that when a low warning is triggered, and these have been low now forever, but I went ahead and topped them off. It's triggered with about 12 to 15 ml of ink still left in the cartridge. So what I got to do is those 3 cartridges that were declared low, that are still declared low, I'm going to have to remove them, remove the sensor, and weigh them. Put the sensor back on and reinstall them. And then just wait until the light right here, the light right here indicates that any one of those three have reached that point where I need to top them back up to full. So I will know that right now I have something like nearly 80 ml on all 12 of them. So if I reach a point where I have reached to 25% from empty, that means I burned through 60 ml of ink, which is impossible to do. Impossible to do while still maintaining that low warning. Impossible. It would have gone empty. Now, on retrospect, they must be thinking, if they even are aware of this, gosh, I shouldn't even upload this video. Anyway, imagine this situation. They should have designed it so after so many filling cycles of that internal compartment, they know exactly what each refill takes volume-wise. When it reaches close to 80, if it goes beyond that, zap the chip. Zap the chip. Don't allow me to circumvent that condition by simply continue to just display low, just because I add ink, and there's always ink available every time it needs to refill that little toilet tank. You see what I mean? Interesting as can be. I cannot wait to hear from any of you who may be experiencing this and are just racking their brains wondering what the heck is going on. I think this might be an option for us. Now, for me, it doesn't really matter. Gosh, 9 out of the 12 are empty, basically. Still printing. I still can print as much as I want. And I'm just waiting at this point to reach one of these lights turning red and tell me that cartridge is now at 25% from empty, and I can go ahead and top it off. And I'll do a video to show you guys the process, how to go about doing this when everything is just wired together and you think there's no way to remove those cartridges safely. I'll go through that for you guys on video and show you how easy that is to perform. But anyway, don't forget to leave your comments below. This is super, super interesting. This does not occur on the Pro 10. This does not occur on the Pro 100. Totally different. I think it slipped by them. We'll see. All right. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and like. Hasta la vista, as they say. See you next time. Bye-bye, everybody.